alphabetical order, starting at that end, moving this way. Well, this is a really fabulous turnout, and I think it says something about the interest of people of Kansas City in democracy and making it work and the issues.
Does that look better? Does that look better, everybody? All right. All right.
All right. Good evening and welcome to this forum for the three candidates who are running for the post of mayor of Kansas City, Missouri. They are Clay Chastain, Sylvester Sly James, and Vincent Lee. The forum is being hosted by the League of Women Voters of Kansas City, Jackson, Clay, and Platte counties. I want to thank All Souls Unitarian Universalist Church for the, you know, I get nervous up here, believe it or not. Actually, the League holds its meeting down the street at Community Christian Church, but this is my home church, All Souls Unitarian Universalist. Wonderful place, and I must say that this is a facility that has served in the forefront of broadening the conversation on many issues on moral issues and public policy issues in this community. And I think tonight is part of that. I do want to call briefly on our minister, the Reverend Dr. Kendall Gibbons, to say a few words.
Again, good evening and welcome to this very exciting and significant event. I am Kendall Gibbons, Senior Minister here at All Souls Unitarian Universalist Church, where it is our mission to build respectful, caring community, to inspire personal spiritual growth, and to create a just and compassionate society. This church has a long history of promoting civil dialogue around important issues here in Kansas City, and we are very honored to host this evening's presentation sponsored by the League of Women Voters. The democratic process is essential to maintaining a vibrant civic life in a culture of diversity and mutual goodwill. Tonight we have the opportunity to share the visions of three candidates for the office of mayor as we ponder together the future of our city. May this time that we spend together be a source of light and inspiration to us all. Welcome to the candidates and to everyone.
And for those of you who don't know me or didn't meet me out front, I'm Linda Smith. I'm the current president of the League of Women Voters of Kansas City, Jackson, Clay, and Platte counties. The League of Women Voters is celebrating its 95th birthday this year. And I think as many of you know, the League is the organization, in effect, that brought the vote to women and has been a continuous force for fairness in the effort to promote democracy. We are nonpartisan. The League never screens candidates. We never endorse a candidate, and we never work against a candidate. We are committed to being nonpartisan and assuring to the best of our ability that there is a level playing field. But as many as you know, we sometimes do take positions on issues. I won't go into any specifics, but you'll usually read about them in letters to the editor in the Kansas City Star, or perhaps in an information sheet in the library. We go through a consensus development process in which issues are studied before we decide to take a position. Our membership is open to everyone. And I might add, we have quite a few men who are members of our league. In fact, our vice president is a man. And there's another one of our male members sitting right there, and another one over there, and another one over there. We're open to everybody. We believe that every candidate for office should have the opportunity to be heard in an atmosphere that is civil and informative, and that is the spirit of this evening's event. Because of the nonpartisan nature of the forum, we ask that there be no banners or signs that you sometimes see in political conventions. And we ask that there be no cheering or applause during the forum itself. We think that the time for applause is at the end, to thank everyone who has come, and to the candidates who've had the willingness to file for office, to campaign, to make their ideas known. We also ask that you turn off your cell phones. Now, how this is going to work is the following. Yeah, thank you. I see my husband turning off his too. Each candidate will give an opening statement, and they are to have drawn a number. And I have to ask my colleague, did you all draw a number? Okay, Charlie, we need to get numbers drawn.
Charlie, we need numbers.
We need numbers. I may quickly make numbers. There's always something, you know. What can I say? These gentlemen are each going to draw a number, and this will determine the order in which they speak. Okay, done. They will make an opening statement. They each have 3 minutes. This will be followed by questions. Now, we've made available 3x5 cards, and if there's anybody who needs a card, Sue Scholl over here has one that she can give to you. And if you have a question you would like to have asked, write it on the card. We have card sorters over here, and they will ferry the questions to me. Now, these need to be the kind of questions that would be posed to each candidate. We don't want questions where, you know, a question would be, well, Mr. Mayor, why did you do this? Or why did you do that? That's not what this is about. What it's about is how each of these candidates would answer the question on a particular issue. I just want to note the league volunteers who are here, Sue Scholl and Dixie Brown. Hold up your hands, please. They are the card collectors. Caroline Arnold and Margie Richcreek over here are the card sorters. Peg Prendergast, one of our former presidents of our league, is our timekeeper, and you will see that Peg has paddles. And she's sitting here in front of the candidates and will hold up paddles to indicate the time left to the speaker. And we're going to be pretty strict about this. You know, if she holds up the stop, is there one that says stop? Yes. If she holds up the stop paddle, you can finish your sentence, but you can't continue on. I mean, over is over, okay? Now, at the end, and there are no rebuttals, by the way. You give your answer, and at the end of this session, you will each have 2 minutes, during which time you can revisit a question, where you can say more about that question. And if you weren't satisfied with what you got to say the first time around, or if there's something else you want to say that you don't think got taken care of. Okay. The last thing is, candidates can speak either from their seat at the table or from the lectern that is right here on my right. And if you choose to speak at the lectern, we need you to have to pick up your mic and bring it with you. We seem to be short one mic, so if you choose to, or if you feel it's more efficient to do it, just stay at your seat and speak from your seat, whichever you're more comfortable with. Lastly, with respect to my posing questions to the candidates, we have a grid. It's here. And it's predetermined. The questions are posed in a rotating, relatively random manner. And so that sometimes one candidate will be first. For the next question, another set of questions, another candidate will be first. So that we have a fairness in the approach. So, gentlemen, let's begin. For the opening remarks, I believe we are beginning with Mr. Lee.
Well, look what I have in the house today. Do I have any Kansas Cityans in this house tonight? I don't see everybody saying too much of nothing, or y'all in doubt of anything. I take it for granted y'all came out here to look for a change, the way the city should be ran, and to make it a better city. Can we agree on that? Yes. All right. In order to do that, we have to work together and labor together. Can we agree on that? Yes. Now, how are we going to run this city? Together. Where everything we do together, it means something to make a city brighter that sits up on the hill. I like coming in that plane, look at Kansas City downtown, sits up on that bubble. Have y'all seen that city like that? It's a wonderful city. I come here today simply because I've been pursuing the chair of the mayor for the last 18 years. And when we decided to file, we made sure we play by their rules. A democratic process, a democracy that's supposed to work. Does it work? Does our votes count? Does what we say? Do we listen here? How many times we labor and go in and out of these doors and meetings and hope that we talk to somebody and they can make some changes and help us along the long, long journey of life in a great city. We don't ask for much. All we want to do is be heard and participate in a democratic process. A city that is wealthy. A beautiful city with beautiful people from all nationalities. Across spectrum, across the United States and around the world, we all merge here. What a beautiful thing. But sometimes we have differences. Differences is part of life. But when you pursue life, you don't pursue life with a frown. You get in the arena and make the changes like a marriage. Our city is a great, big, beautiful bride. She don't have a hope chest. She have tools, modern tools for yesterday, from the great leaders no longer amongst us, with their names up on our landmarks. Fabulous buildings. Got 30 seconds? Wow. Slide? What do you think about that? I love you, Kansas City, and let's get it on, okay?
Okay. Mr. Miller.
4 years ago, well, first of all, thank you all for being here, and thank you for allowing me to be here. honored to have this position as your mayor. I take it very seriously. 4 years ago, I came to you and asked you to join with me so that we could work together to get some things done in the city. We have, over those 4 years, been able to accomplish a great deal. Not everything is perfect, but then again, nothing ever is. As a result of our efforts of working together, you have a more efficient government. You have a budget that is tighter. You have financial stability. We changed some things with pension. You have rail coming out of the ground for the first time since the 50s. We have an optimistic attitude. We have young people moving back to the city. We have fun. We have the Royals. I can't take credit for all of that, but what the heck, why not? At the end of the day, what we have shown is that by working together, we can accomplish some great things in this city. And we've accomplished those things. So what I'm going to be asking you for is to sign up for another 4 years so that we can complete some of the things that we've started. And so that we can continue on the path of momentum that we've created. The only thing that's going to stop us at this point is if we allow ourselves to become stagnant and if we allow self-doubt to creep in. We finally turn that corner where we're a confident city, one that's taking our place on the world and international and national stage. We're leaders. People in this city are leaders. And we want to continue to lead the country in some of the areas in which we are. So thank you for being here this evening. Hope to have a good forum. And welcome to All Souls. Thank you.
Mr. Chastain.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Again, I thank you all for coming tonight and the League of Women Voters for hosting this, or we wouldn't have a public debate of the issues. 35 years ago, which seems like yesterday, I was recruited out of the University of Arkansas by Black and Veatch here in Kansas City to be an electrical engineer. And I came up here to get an apartment, and I'd never been to Kansas City but one time and didn't see the old neighborhoods, the boulevards, the fountains, the charming architecture, and it was love at first sight. And I have not fallen out of love with this city for 35 years, despite a rocky road. So I'm running in this mayor's race because I want to show what good leadership is and what good leadership can do to bring this city back to the top, to make it a premier city again. I'm not interested in minding the store or just bringing the city back, but I want to bring Kansas City roaring back. Now, the current mayor, I don't believe that he has the wherewithal to do that. Mayor James is a very intelligent man, very accomplished attorney. He's not a lazy mayor. He works hard. And he can dance. But Mayor James can't lead. He doesn't listen to the voters, the people. He's run a boss-style administration. He's had a demeanor that when he's challenged, he kind of has a huffy-puffy attitude. And his vision has not inspired the people. Now, probably the most egregious thing of his administration is the fact that Mayor Sly's administration has been a breeding ground for acts of bad faith against the public trust and the public interest, i.e., the obstruction of a vote on a valid light rail initiative, the sabotaging of the ballot language on that light rail initiative, the rigging of 2 streetcar elections, and depriving citywide voters of a say on an issue of such importance to the city. So we can do better. I will do better if you elect me as Kansas City's next mayor. Real quickly, 10, 15 seconds, ma'am. My vision is to grow and prosper this city, to increase its population, to increase jobs, economic growth, because we have to do that to take care of the infrastructure in this city, which is 315 square miles. We have not grown in population. I have a plan, specific plan to grow the city in jobs, population, and in economic development. Thank you.
Thank you, gentlemen. Yeah, remember, we're going to hold our applause until the end. I know it makes you feel kind of all quiet out there, but it works, believe me. We're going to move on to the question and answer period of our program now. And I do have a set of questions that have been brought to me by the sorters. They come from you. And according to our random chart here, the first question will be addressed to Mr. Chastain first, Mr. James second, and Mr. Lee third. The question is, if elected, what will your top 3 priorities be? Your top 3 priorities if elected.
Number 1 is to establish an honest, open government that the people respect, are inspired by, and have confidence in. And that means a government that represents the interest of the everyday citizen, not the wealthy developers, not the construction companies, not the elite. And a government that will run an efficient city and a well-functioning city and provide new innovative changes to make this city attractive and compelling to the outside world so that we can attract new young urban professionals, businesses, corporations, conventions, tourists. So that's the number 1 thing. If you don't have an honest, open government that people respect and have trust in, you can't get anything done, number 1. Number 2, we cannot abide being the 10th most dangerous city to live in the United States of America. That is a human tragedy, an abomination, and it will get my full attention to make this city a safer place to live. Number 3, we have a lousy transit system. I'm going to propose as an electrical engineer a multimodal, light rail based, regional public transportation system, not a 2-mile touristy frou-frou streetcar line, but a transit system will get people to jobs, create economic development across this city, and that will connect the suburban areas to the central city, to the airport, downtown, Union Station. And that's going to be the catalyst and the enzyme to ignite this revitalization and growth of this city.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And the question has to do with what would your top 3 priorities be?
The first one would be to continue the work that we started with Turn the Page KC, a program targeted at making sure that young children are reading proficiently by the time they reach 3rd grade. Because we know that education is absolutely crucial. It's becoming more crucial as we continue to advance in an increasingly technological society. Second issue, we're going to continue to bring homicides down. Last year, through KC Nova, a program that I've worked with since day 1, a collaboration between the U.S. Attorney, Jackson County Prosecutor, Police Department, FBI, ATF, UMKC, Probation and Parole, and Social Services, my office. Last year, we had the lowest number of homicides since 1972. That was done through a program that we've worked on now for 2.5 years, and we are hoping and praying that we can continue to tweak it so that it gets even better. We will continue to bring that violence down. The third thing that we'll do in order to make sure, if I'm elected, is to make sure that we continue to do those things that create jobs all over the city, not just downtown, not just out south, but all over the city. More Cerner work, 15,000 jobs over the next 10 years, to make sure that we're spreading that around and that we have workforce development training.
Mr. Lee.
Truly amazing. With all the contractors coming to our city, the unions and stuff being left out, my top priority is to make sure that the people who live in Kansas City will have those contracts, have an open door policy to where you can be heard and creative with a new administration. Without you, there'd be no city. It's just as plain as that. My second most important thing, attend to the needs of the people that are in dire strait of medical, education, homeless, veterans, a cross section of a lot of people that does not feel the love from those who control the city. I'm out there every day. They approach me, they talk to me, they hug me. I labor and work with them. I do all that I can. And the third most important thing, what do you do about education? We have to restructure it and make it happen in the city where we're supposed to have a good, strong public education, not an education led by people outside our cities. We can make Kansas City a beautiful city if we labor and work together. This I know we can do together.
Thank you. We'll move on to the next question, and it will be, the candidates would speak in the following order: Mr. James, Mr. Lee, and Mr. Chastain. What would you do to keep the American Royal in Kansas City? Not Kansas City, Kansas. The American Royal brings in $76 million to the city. Is this going to end up being like the Freeway and Sporting KC?
The issue of the American Royal is one that can't be taken out of context. American Royal sits in the West Bottoms. We have made mistakes in the past by trying to develop areas of this city, one little building at a time, one spot at a time. We have to develop the entire area. There has to be a plan that works for the people who live there, and there has to be some coalescence around that plan, because I'll tell you, there is a ton of disagreement about what should happen with the Royal. There is a serious dispute as to whether or not the American Royal creates that kind of economic activity. As a matter of fact, their proposal in pro formas said 60 million, and that is not necessarily something we've been able to verify. Whatever we do with the American Royal, it has to be something that fits into the entire scheme of the West Bottoms. It's one of those areas that is kind of a frontier. We don't want to go down there and start trying to develop one little corner at a time so that we wind up with a hodgepodge. So we've declared it surplus. An RFP will be issued here shortly. And developers and other people who have an interest in the area and the American Royal can come in and make response to their RFP about what they would do there and how they would do it, and then we'll move on from there.
All right, Mr. Lee.
American Royal, a legacy that could still survive if they work together with the people who love Kemper Arena. A legacy, Kemper Arena. Our city was the west bottom to the east side, south side, north of the river. It's our city. And if we're gonna do anything with American Royal, they have to come to the table and labor and work and show us that they're willing to stay in Kansas City, not bulldog the people around. I love Kemper Arena for its historical significance. And Kemper, under my administration, will be stronger and better than ever. And we have a plan to make the bottom much viable, connected to downtown Kansas City, to run it clear out to the baseball stadium. We have a wonderful plan. I want the boys to sit down and talk to me and labor with me. I want that, I need that, and they need us to come and stop playing games with the citizens of Kansas City. It's our dollars, our city, not theirs. It's ours. We got to work together to make it happen.
Mr. Chastain, the question has to do with keeping the American Royal.
I don't think anybody's answered that question, have they? I say that we don't keep the American Royal. We let them go to Kansas or wherever they want to go. That proposal that they offered that was backed and signed by all the elite, if they want to fund a new facility for the American Royal, let them do it. The taxpayers aren't going to do that. That's my position. I think the more of the question also should involve, or begs the question, what are we going to do with Kemper Arena if they do go somewhere else? And I think one of the things I was thinking about the other day, and this is just off the top of my head, but it would be nice for the city to maintain that and work with Habitat of Humanity as a depository for leftover construction materials. They go to the landfill right now. Like 20% of every job, the construction materials are left over, and they cart them to the landfill because it's too expensive to restock it. So we could help our poor people that need these construction materials to fix up their houses. They could just come to the Kemper Arena where these things are storehoused, and we have volunteers to load them onto their trucks, and that would be a way to keep them out of the landfill and to allow our poor people to have free building materials in which to fix up their house. But that's just one idea. But I'm not going to, as mayor, I'm not going to bend over backwards for the American Royale when they come forward with a plan that says the taxpayers, you fund half of our new facility for us. Let the wealthy do that.
Okay. Moving on to the third question. We have an issue here of camera angle. You want this moved this way? Hey, we're flexible. All right, moving on. Third question, and it will be Mr. Lee, Mr. Chastain, and Mr. James in that order. Do you have ideas for keeping children safe from guns and for holding adults responsible? Mr. Lee, you'll need your mic there. Okay.
Cut and dry. Take the magic out of it. We got all kind of laws to restrict the parents. And if we don't put more pressure on the parents to secure their weapons, then the law needs to step in and tighten their belts and not pick and select who they're going to prosecute and let them get away with it. The gun makers, let's make them pay. When a child is involved in a crime, let's lay a little hard on the gun makers. This is a big city. Education supposed to be number one. How do we prevent that? Education. How do we save our children? We work with our children, not just put them out there in the street with nothing for them to do. Now summer's gonna be up on us, and gun violence is high in this city and other cities. But we're gonna change that when I become mayor. It's cut and dry, take the magic out of it. Cleaver had a wonderful program called the Hot Summer Nights. We can improve the hot summer nights. We can make schools and things and vacant buildings more usable to protect and save our children. Our children are a valuable commodity. No matter what we do, we're gonna pass this torch to those children in depressed neighborhoods. And if they don't feel the love, gun violence is gonna keep going up. And that's the problem we have. They do not feel the love from those who control our cities now.
Mr. Chastain, keeping our children safe from guns and holding adults responsible.
Well, having two girls, myself, a 30-year-old daughter who's here tonight, and a daughter that just turned 9 years old, I'm very concerned about that. When I saw that tragedy in Connecticut, I still get emotional about that. But I believe in concealed carry, because I want somebody in that school to stop that person if they walk into a school and start shooting children. And number two, we have to go back to our traditional American values in this country. There's something wrong with our culture when children are shot. And that means we have to go back to "In God We Trust." And we have to go back with respect for authority. And we have to go back for strength of families. And we have to go back to valuing education and loving your neighbor. So it's not just a gun issue. It's an issue of reinforcing our values in families so that we don't have people out there committing these atrocities. But taking all the guns away from people, I don't believe that's the answer. Absolutely not. So, what parents can do is what I do. I watch my children constantly. I don't let them out of my sight. And I make sure that anybody they're with, they're protected as well. So it's up to the parents to protect their children And then when they're in the schools, we need somebody with a gun in those schools or a security guard to stop those individuals that might go on a rampage.
Okay. There we Mr. James, your
Sure.
question to you.
Let me respond to the last part of your question first with regards to holding adults responsible. Last week, I, along with Major Joe McHale and Jackson County prosecutors and the Missouri Attorney General's office, went to Just City to argue and support a bill that we had a hand in helping to get drafted to have armed offender courts. Courts that deal specifically with people who commit gun violence in this city. We've wanted that for some time. It's been difficult, and we're closer than we've ever been. Number two, the other thing about guns is you have to give kids some place to be where it's safe. If we're going to have kids running around on the street where it's not safe, then gun violence is going to take place. We have to give them a place to go. That's why Mayor's Nights, Club KC, Arts Tech, we served over 10,000 kids last year in Club KC alone. 8,000 kids played volleyball, basketball, and soccer. We had kids at Arts Tech. We take kids who are at risk and we put them in a program through KC Nova, and we had 22 kids. Of the 22 that went through the program last summer, 20 of them have been successfully free of any involvement with the law since that time. That's how we do it. The last thing that we do is we continue to fight, push, and prod, like I've done for the last 4 years, for reasonable and sensible gun laws. Don't have to take guns away from people, but 19-year-olds should not be having concealed carry weapons so that they can be illegally drunk while they're legally strapped.
Thank you. Moving on to the fourth question, and it will be in this order: Mr. Chastain, Mr. James, and Mr. Lee. Kansas City's infrastructure, especially water and sewers, is fragile. Where does adequate infrastructure funding fall in your top 10 priorities? Mr. Chastain.
Can I add one more thing to that last question before I answer this one? Did you say that was possible?
Well, no, you can do that in your final statement at
okay.
the end.
My philosophy is that water and sewer is part of our infrastructure. It's aging, and we're not able to keep up with maintaining it. We don't have enough revenues to maintain it. If you look at a city like Denver, in 1960, it had the same population as Kansas City, 475,000. In 50 years, Denver's added almost 200,000 people into their city limits. We have stagnated at 475. So we aren't growing this city in jobs like he talked about. We aren't growing in population. You know that. And so therefore, we are strapped continually with not enough money to take care of our infrastructure. So we have to grow this city and population primarily. That'll bring in jobs and more economic development. We have to have a catalyst like I talked about before. So we don't want to spend all of our capital on having the best sewers in the world, or brand new sewers. That's not going to bring people to Kansas City. We want to focus on a project that's going to make the city more attractive to the outside world, to bring people in and jobs in. Then we have an expanded supply of revenue with which to take on our infrastructure and fix it. So it's not a priority for me to deal with the infrastructure immediately, but to grow the city so we have more revenues in the future to then take on and repair our sewers and our roads and our bridges, etc.
Mr. James.
Our citizen satisfaction surveys tell us time and time and time and time again that infrastructure is at the top of the list of things that are important, not only for citizens, but for business. The problem is that the can of infrastructure has been kicked down the road for so many years by so many times that now we have a $6 billion backlog. We have to care what our sewers are like because the federal government has us on a 25-year unfunded mandate of overflow control. So we don't have a choice here. We absolutely have to fix our overflow control programs and problems. Infrastructure is key to building a city. People don't leave or not come to Kansas City because of infrastructure. Lots of people come to Kansas City right out of college, young people. They get married, they have a kid, and because of education, they leave. That's why the population isn't growing. And you know how you know that? Because the population around the city continues to pick up the people who came here, and as soon as they got pregnant or as soon as they had a child, they left for better educational opportunities. Infrastructure is key. We can't continue to ignore it. It's like anything else. If you let it sit there long enough and you don't pay attention to it, you don't fix it, sooner or later it's going to break. And if we recall what happened in Minneapolis, a bridge fell with a bunch of cars and people in it. We don't need that to happen here. We need to take care of our basics. Infrastructure is one of those basics that any city has an obligation to repair, maintain, and keep.
Mr. Lee.
Water. Everybody know your water bill done triple and double. It's out of control. They say they need more money to take care of our infrastructure. Do they really need it? Or are they just saying it? It's been said from one administration to the next administration. All I know is I have a lot of people, ever since they changed the water thing over and put the gray boxes in our house, our water bill has now gone to 24 times a year instead of 6 times a year. Let's talk about Briar's Cliff, where they're pumping all the fly ash into Briar's Cliff and getting in our water source. Is anybody talking about that? The contamination? We have issues with people contaminating our environment in which we live in. What about the asbestos they were throwing out the Argyle building down there? Anybody address that? The asbestos is a cancer-causing floating object. We have to address people who violate our EPA and our air quality and our water system. It's top priority for me, because if I don't do anything about the contamination, then I myself will fail. It's top priority. And we're gonna fix that, and we're gonna address those who's contaminated our air and our water source.
Thank you. Well, we seem to be getting into money here. Now, by the way, some questions can be answered in less than 90 seconds, so if we have one that can be a yes or a no, it's okay if you do that, unless you want to elaborate.
Hey, we're politicians.
Right, okay. We're going Mr. James, Mr. Lee, and then Mr. Chastain. Mr. James,
Yes.
Do you support the 1% earnings tax, or would you support eliminating it?
I absolutely, unequivocally, without doubt, and will continuously support the 1% earnings tax. The earnings tax constitutes 40% of our general fund. The earnings tax is approximately the equivalent of the budget for the police department. Without the earnings tax, this city has a serious problem. There is no way, there is no method, there is no other tax that we could levy that will offset a loss of $200 million in our general fund. So yes, I support it. We'll always support it. We'll continue to support it, and I'll be out there fighting like heck for it next year to make sure that it passes, because that is in the best interest of our city. Finally, the only other thing about the earnings tax that needs to be said is this is the only way that when you have a community like ours where there's a lot of traffic back and forth over state line into the city, this is the only way to make sure that those who come from outside of the city have contribute something to the maintenance and the upkeep of the city, because they certainly contribute to the deterioration.
Mr. Lee.
Yes. The earning tax, ever since they've been charging the people to come into our city and work in our city, I think we need to increase it. Compared to where our city look and across the state line, and all the defamatory things they say about their main city, which lies west of Jefferson City. I'm looking at some things, even charging vehicles that come into our city and work in our city that tear up our streets and park on our sidewalk and deteriorate our streets and sidewalk. We have to find ways to generate money, put it on those who come in our city and make money. I think they make enough money to give us a little bit more back to us. Yes, I do support that, and I would like to increase it.
Mr. Chastain.
First of all, we talked about the infrastructure. Mayor Sly James is talking about raising your property taxes to deal with infrastructure. I'm not going to raise your taxes. We're going to grow this city and develop more revenue to fix our infrastructure. Now, the earnings tax. Again, I support phasing this tax out over 10 years. In 5 years, renewing it when it comes up for renewal next year, because we'd go into withdrawal symptoms if we lost that revenue. But phase half of it out in 5 years. As the city grows under my leadership and we have more people moving in here, more jobs, more economic development, more revenue, we scale that back to a half cent. And then in 10 years, we eliminate it altogether. We are taxed too much in this city. We are a city that drives off businesses and people because we have one of the highest tax rates in the nation. So, the way to do that, again, is to grow this city, not to keep taxing people, to fix the infrastructure. Grow the city, grow the revenue stream to deal with our infrastructure. So, the 1% earnings tax, let's go back to what they said, is people coming here ought to pay for some of the infrastructure that they're wearing out. They're paying it when they come in and buy our goods and pay our sales tax. But we're driving them off by having too high of a tax rate in this city. And I'm going to gradually eliminate the 1 cent earnings tax if I'm mayor.
Thank you. Moving on, and here we get to another money-related issue. What's your position on the $1.2 billion plan to rebuild the Kansas City International Airport? And I failed to say it will be Mr. Lee, Mr. Chastain, and Mr. James in that order. Mr. Lee, what's your position regarding rebuilding the KCMO International Airport?
I participated in that study they had, and my recommendation was to build a new airport, but we can keep the other one there. I believe the current airport sits on 11,000 acres. We can do some green-friendly things, solar and wind, generate some things that be green-friendly. But at another location, we need to move that airport where the buck of the city lies in Jackson County, where the other cities and things that can enjoy it, and there's different ways we can pay for it. We can use our bonds, Jackson County bonds, the other cities inside of Jackson County, and the most important thing, y'all can invest and buy some bonds. Let's open it up and do something creative for the 21st century. Let's not be afraid. I love the design of the airport myself. But I think with the railroad tracks out in that particular area I'm looking at, we can do a whole lot better. We can do better than better. I know that people are attracted to it because it sits up in the northwest corner of our state, but it's too far away. Let's bring it inside the state of Missouri. Let's make some things and create jobs for people that where a lot of cities can benefit from it. Just I know we can do this here, but we have no one to be fair. Build an airport for the 21st century. Keep the same design, but let's do some other things up in that corner, in the northwest corner.
Mr. Chastain.
The airport is a tough call.
Yeah.
But whatever we do, the people need to vote on it, and we need to integrate into it a light rail train system that connects people to the downtown, to the Union Station, to the plaza, to the zoo, to Cerner, and points beyond, where you get on that train and you do not have to deboard that train and make a transfer to any of those destinations. So if we revamp the present Kansas City configuration, KCI configuration, that does save money, but it costs more to scab the light rail train system into those 3 terminals. Now that airport, I'm an engineer, and that airport was built 45 years ago. Can you imagine the difference between a Ford Pinto and a Ford Focus right now? You've got security, you've got efficiencies, you've got all kinds of issues that can be resolved with a new airport, especially if it's integrated into a brand new light rail train system. We would have the only one in the nation, a brand new airport with a train system integrated into that. So you can get your baggage and run and walk through the portals and jump on that train and go 65 miles an hour, one stop in the Northland, go to downtown, Union Station, the plaza, our major destinations. So the airport, If we invest 500, 600 million in the old airport, we're still way far out. We could build a new airport 4 or 5 miles closer in. That adds convenience. It gives us the brand new airport, and we build a light rail line into that airport.
Mr. James.
You know, I've had a meeting with the airport consultants, the airline negotiators, and I'm going to take my cue from the airlines because we're landlords. They're our tenants. They want something different. The one thing that they said is nothing is not an option. There has to be some changes. One of the tasks of leadership is to make hard decisions today that you know will have positive impacts down the road. We're not building this city, we're not building an airport for today. We're building an airport for the next 40 years, just like the people who built this one did 40, 45 years ago. Those are hard decisions. It won't be easy. A lot of people like a lot of things, but that doesn't necessarily mean that we can simply stand on that and not do something that's going to be productive down the road. So there will be changes at the airport. I don't think it's going to be 1.2 billion, but I will tell you this. The airlines want changes, and they're going to pretty much tell us the type of changes that they want. They're the ones who will be paying for it because that's where the money comes from. Doesn't come out of taxes, comes out of airport fees and fees that they charge. So they're going to tell us what they want, and as landlords, we will then negotiate with them to find out if that's what we do. Bottom line is, we have to be looking down the road and towards the future, not at what we did 40 or 45 years ago. Our kids will want us to do something other than leave them a pile of bricks.
Thank you. The next question be in this order: Mr. Chastain, Mr. James, and then Mr. Lee. And I have 2 cards, and they're really interlinked, so I'm going to go with combine those questions. Do you believe it is appropriate for the city to redirect health levy money to purposes other than services for the medically indigent? And then the connecting card is, what can be done to restore funding cuts to Truman Medical Center, Swope Parkway, and Samuel Rogers? I think there may be some other safety net clinics there that aren't mentioned, but so the question is diverting money from the health levy to other purposes, but also restoring money. And I think we're talking health levy money. So, Mr. Chastain.
Okay, I'll try to do what you implored us to do. Number 1, no, I wouldn't cut the funding, and number 2, I'd restore it.
Okay. Mr. James.
Let's talk a little bit about the history of how this came to be. The issue of cuts to the health levy was something that had to be done pursuant to the contracts that we have with the safety net providers. When we knew that the revenue was not coming in, we were obligated to give them by a date certain a indication of what we would do if the revenues continued at that pace. Now, you may recall that we had this debate, pretty open debate some time ago, wherein we talked about what would happen if we didn't collect more money from our ambulance billing. And that is exactly what happened, and that's what we're dealing with to some extent right now. We've already restored $1 million of the $2 million cut. There's a possibility that more will be restored before it's all over. But it's not a matter of taking it from one part, or from health levy and indigent care, and moving it to automobiles. This is all within the health levy because the ambulance is certainly part of the safety net providers, and that's where the issue originally started, and that's where we have a problem. So I think that we're going to be fine by the time it's all over and said and done with, that there will be some more money restored. Whether the additional $1 million is totally restored, I can't say, but I think we have a chance of restoring some more of that money like we've already done with the first $1 million.
Thank you. Mr. Lee.
Health care. I'll open up talking about health care. Until you go to Truman Medical Center and see people who lost their jobs, are homeless, and they have cancer, they go in there for all type of medical needs. That's a big hospital. We have an educational ring attached to Truman Medical Center. We can find money for any and everything. Until you get sick, you have no other place to go when you go there and you talk to the doctors and you see the patient and the nurses, the staff is wondering, they're tired. They are tired when they go home. They're tired when they come back to work. I'm concerned about the money that go to Truman Medical Center. We get money to other hospitals. We're gonna take care of Truman Medical Center. I promise you that. Whether you like it or not, it's my responsibility to take care of every citizen and be a mayor of everybody in this city, and we're gonna take care of those like we take care of other nations and countries. Your health comes first with this administration. I will not trifle with it at all. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I think the next question is an important one, and I'm not sure I am going to read all the words properly. So if this is your question and I don't get the word right, you better sing out and make it right. It's going to be in this order. Mr. James, Mr. Lee, and then Mr. Chastain. Would you support an effort to recover dollars earmarked for the streetcar that was voted down, and then parenthetically, $2 million of public funds, in paren, and return those funds to where they belong?
I'm not really sure that I understand the second part of that question, but the answer with regards to restoring funds, no, because the funds did not come from there. The funds came from money that was raised for streetcar, by streetcar. As a matter of fact, it's part of a note that we have to pay back to the federal government by June, I believe, of 2017. So those funds that are sitting there is basically money that has to be paid back to the federal government, and we don't have much choice there. With regards to what was the second part?
It said, and return those funds to where they belong. I think you may have answered that. You've said that they.
So I'll
Okay.
just stop.
Yeah. And my challenge, by the way, is that I am to read these questions as they are presented. I do not take the liberty of paraphrasing them. So if there's one here that I absolutely don't understand, I may pass over that question. Okay, Mr. Lee.
The purpose of a vote is a part of a democracy. We had a lot of people went out and voted in August, voted it down. They went out again in November and voted it down. And if the administration did not make themselves plain and clear to where the monies and things come from, and the vote wasn't necessary, then why did we go and vote twice in 1 year and vote down the streetcar? It's a sad day when we go and vote and take time and believe our vote count, and yet still they proceed doing what they want to do. This is a bunch of, you know what I want to call it, and we need to take that bunch of, you know what I want to call it, and give it to the Department of Justice, put it in the hands of those who are supposed to be looking and caretakers over the federal dollars that match our dollars or whoever dollars, and let them go and take care of business for the people in the United States of America. Enough is enough. I voted no twice. I want to know why they still proceeding. I would definitely address that issue effectively within the first day I take office.
All right, moving on. We're going to have a change of pace here.
Ma'am, I don't think you let me answer the question.
Mr. Chastain, I am so sorry. You're
See,
right.
I answered that last question in such brevity that you probably
No, you know, I've got my little chart here.
forgot I was over here, right?
Okay, please, accept my apologies.
Ladies and gentlemen, I think the Sly's streetcar escapade is a black eye on Kansas City and will be a black mark on his administration. And I think this $10 million they're talking about, remember when Councilman Ford raised the issue, you can't go ahead and spend $10 million of PIAC neighborhood money for the streetcar plan before it's even been approved, the expansion's been approved. That's what I think this question's relating to. Not federal money and all this rigmarole he talked about. They spent some of that money before it was approved, and that person wants to know if you're going to give that money back to PIAC. I believe that's what the question's about.
Yes, in fact, now that you say that, I see that it is indeed an A in there, PIAC. Yes. Okay.
So again, this streetcar fiasco was a mistake, a misbegotten, badly conceived plan from the beginning, forced on the people. It's not an intelligent transit system. It's not a transit system at all. It's a touristy frou-frou line. It's not meant to get people to jobs. In fact, the chief architect, Russ Johnson, said it's not about transit, it's about economic development. So Mayor James has not proposed in 4 years a comprehensive regional transit system that will improve our transit system and help people get to jobs and create economic development and make this city a more attractive city. He's not been able to do that. He's focused on frou-frou. And he didn't listen to the people when they said no. He's still trying to push it down Main Street, even though the voters said no to this plan.
Okay, stop. Now, as a reminder, if any of you want to revisit this question, you can do so in your final statement at the end. Changing pace, because we've seen a lot about the idea of a new hotel. Regarding new downtown hotel, year-round occupancy rate for existing hotels is poor. How is a new hotel economically feasible? And this is going to be Mr. Lee, then Mr. Chastain, and Mr. James. Mr. Lee.
More hotel. If the city's growing and the business is great, we need hotel space. Not only downtown, but in the bottoms. Not only in the bottoms, we need to get on the other side of Truce Avenue going east as well and do some redevelopment with hotels and shops and stores. We need to take and focus our energy other than downtown Kansas City. Hotels. It's an important issue. But what are we doing with the spaces tonight? The nights that we have hotels and they're not being used. Who's running our tourism place? Who's making sure those hotels are really being beneficial to the taxpayers? What events are we having? Who's controlling the city? Who's gonna make sure those hotels stay packed? What about discounts to the citizens when they want to use the hotel? It's virtually impossible what they charge for those hotels and things when they want to rent them out. The average citizen can't even go down there and stay in them. We have to come up with a way to make sure that all of Kansas City can benefit with a growing hotel industry, not just only downtown Kansas City, but let's look north of the river as well. Let's do some great things. Let's put our dollars where it's really needed. Hotels.
And Mr. Are you, sorry, go ahead.
Hotels.
I'm absolutely opposed to a downtown convention hotel. This is another example of a glitzy project to benefit developers, construction companies. It doesn't do anything to directly help the average, everyday citizen. And if we want a new hotel, let the private developer build it on his dime, not with taxpayer subsidies. Now, I say an example of this. For too many decades, Kansas City's leadership has invested too much of this city's capital and resources into glitzy projects that mostly favor and benefit and entertain the wealthy, and not enough of our resources into neighborhoods, infrastructure, and uplifting poor people in disadvantaged parts of this city. And under my administration, that will all change, and you can take that change to the bank. Now, as far as hotels, again, if we have a light rail train system going out to the airport, we can use those hotels, those 10 hotels out there by the airport, connect them to the convention center. There's your downtown convention hotel space without building a new one. And furthermore, the trend is away from conventions. Corporations don't spring for that money anymore. They use Skype and such things as that. So to build and invest in $1 billion 5-star downtown convention hotel is going against the trend. It's a waste of money. It's not a good value for the investment. And it's going to drive the price of hotel rooms that we have down, so the hotel industry can't make a good living because we've inundated the market with too many hotel rooms.
We have to have a downtown hotel, and I'll tell you why. I get to travel with the CBA to meet with people who want to come to this city for conventions. I was in DC 3 weeks ago. We met with about 20 groups, large groups, some that had been here and left. Skills USA totally outgrew us. We ran out of hotel space. We ran out of ballroom space. We ran out of floor space. They left. 4-H totally outgrew us. We ran out of space. We met with those 20 convention planners, and here's what they asked. They asked two things. Number one, do you have any more new hotel rooms within walking distance of the convention center? And number two, how do we get our kids in and out of the areas safely? Okay? Those were the two issues that they were concerned about. We have been looking at hotel deals for 5 years. Started looking at them the last year of the Funkhauser administration, been looking at them all 4 of mine. And one thing I can tell you is that I've said from the beginning, and I'll continue to say today, we will get a downtown convention hotel when the deal falls within the parameters of no money from the general fund, no debt on the city's books, and no city guarantees. When we can get that done, then we'll have a hotel. But the reason that the hotel occupancy is low is because people stopped coming here because there weren't enough hotel rooms. You can't attract 30,000 people who need hotel rooms when you only have 10,000 rooms.
Thank you. Okay, the next question, we're sort of, again, focusing on downtown. In this order, Mr. Chastain, Mr. James, Mr. Lee. How do you feel about the idea of building a stadium downtown? Mr. Chastain.
N-O.
Okay.
I'm sorry, what was the order again?
How do you feel about the idea of building a stadium downtown?
We've had a number of conversations with people who want to do that, and I'd say at this point it's extremely impractical. We just spent, and I was the co-chair of the program with Albert Reederer to get the stadiums renovated a few years back. We still have bonds that need to be paid off on that renovation. The stadiums are not only functional, they're exceptional. So I would say that it is impractical and unlikely to build a new stadium downtown under the circumstances.
Is that a no, Mayor James?
It is
Just for the record, you know.
It is what it was.
Okay.
Okay.
All depends on what side the stadium is gonna be. You know, we possibly could have a stadium downtown. We are a growing city. Everybody said this city is doing great with all the entertainment we have. We can have more than one event. We don't need a great big stadium like the size of the stadiums out there on I-70. You know, you wonder what to do with Kemper Arena. Rip the seats out and put a roof over it and let it roll back. We got a stadium sitting there. That's one thing we can do with Kemper Arena. Seriously speaking, it's something that I'll take a real close look at with a strong positive staff and stuff, and look in and see what we can do to help Kansas City grow and be more entertaining around the clock. It's possible. I'm not just gonna say no right now, but I'll definitely take a good look at it and a hard look. I love Kemper Arena. I love the area down there. Let's build it up. Let's do something great other than trying to give our landmarks away or letting it sit there and bring in a bunch of old warehouse stuff sticking up in Kemper. On my watch, no. Kemper deserve better. Stadium, possible. Yes.
Okay, moving on. And the responses will be in this order: Mr. James, Mr. Lee, and then Mr. Chastain. Is it fair for jobs that are performed well by city employees to be contracted out to private businesses, making people lose decent city jobs? Mr. James.
Depends. The city is not in the business of doing everything. And if we try to do everything, then we're going to be inefficient. And if we're inefficient, then we're wasting money. Some things are better done outside of City Hall. Those things that are better done outside of City Hall should be examined and perhaps done outside of City Hall. But those things that are best done inside, we keep. There is no hard and fast answer, but here's the reality. Technology and artificial intelligence will threaten 45% of the jobs that currently exist over the next 25 years. That's not my number. Those are the numbers of people who know. When we understand the impact of technology, when we know that we can get the job of 20 people done in a way that only requires 5, then it's hard for us to, on the one hand, come to you and tell you that we're being efficient with your tax dollars, while we know that we're not. So under certain circumstances, yes, some jobs will have to be farmed out outside. Some things are simply done better by the private sector. On the other hand, some things aren't, and the real hard problem is deciding what's what and how to get it done.
Mr. Lee.
I have had many people, you see them picking all downtown everywhere, talking about scabs and people getting their jobs and stuff like this here. They've been paid out our dollars to do certain things. My job would be to make sure citizens inside the city limits of Kansas City have jobs, gainfully employed. Anytime I have to turn outside of Kansas City and have somebody come in, that's saying to you all that you're not intelligent enough or smart enough to handle these jobs. Education was a big thing from these people. You know what I mean? They gotta come here, get educated, to have kids, they leave. Why do they leave? Not only because they got education, they're looking for something better than what we have to offer. So if the people that live in Kansas City wants to go to work, and we want crime to drop, and give these children that's in junior high school a program that they can work with these corporations inside our city limits and give them the experience what life is all about in the work industry, that citizens have the key to the tax dollars. I know that they can do better. They'd be willing to stay in our city and work city jobs. It's our dollars. Put your children, your grandchildren and great-grandchildren to work in the city that you love so much. I believe with all my heart and soul, it is our responsibility to employ our people of our great city. Not let other people come from broke designations come in here and take our money, take it back to where they live and destroy our city and slander our name. No more slander.
Mr. Chastain.
Well, I agreed with Mr. Lee until he started talking about slander.
Leave them alone.
I wonder if Mayor James and the City Council would like to have their jobs privatized. You know, the Japanese have a philosophy where they take people into their companies and they're there for life. And when somebody can't do the job as well, they take them aside and train them, give them extra training. Mm-hmm. They're loyal. People are loyal to each other. Mm-hmm. And that's why they have such a strong work ethic and they produce such efficient products. I don't believe in cutting or privatizing any jobs. I didn't support the privatization of the ambulance billing jobs that Mayor Sly James did. In fact, he said that he implied those employees sucked at their jobs. You work with these people. You train them to do the jobs. Because that, like Mr. Lee said, we have an obligation and a loyalty to employ our own people. And if they're not efficient, train them. Get them the training they need. People outside of Kansas City aren't smarter than we are here. They may have a leg up because they got training. Let's give our own people training and have them keep their jobs. It's important to them. It's their livelihood. It's their pride and self-esteem, how they support their families. You don't just privatize them on a whim because, oh, you're not quite as efficient as we can, as this other company that we can hire from outside Kansas City. So I'm going to be loyal to our employees, work with them, and keep them employed, and I don't support privatization.
All right, moving on. Well, this question's a little long and very specific by someone who obviously has knowledge about the topic. And we'll have it answered in this order: Mr. Lee, Mr. Chastain, and Mr. James. KC has the nation's third largest open admission, no-kill animal shelter, saving 10,000 animals last year. However, The Kansas City Pet Project receives very little funding from the city and is housed in a decrepit building 50 years out of date. How will you help to improve the lives of animals in Kansas City? Mr. Lee.
Two-legged animals or four-legged animals?
Well, it says it saves 10,000. The number here is 10,000 per year. And it refers specifically to the Kansas City Pet Project. And we're operating out of a building that is decrepit and 50 years out of date.
I love animals. I love seeing the animals, little dogs in the cars and all that stuff. And people got birds and pigs. They got all that kind of stuff. It's nice that people love their pets and they have pets and stuff, you know. I don't know much about the animal shelter, but if it's in the city limits, Kansas City, it's something we need to address. I'm quite sure with a lot of community service and a little effort for some of our materials that we collect that Clay Chastain was talking about, I think we could build another shelter house to put the dogs and all the pets in. I don't see anything wrong with that. If it's a problem in making the city have a black eye on it, just building a little shed or something, you know what I mean? Maybe go to Home Depot, get some too. I don't know. We'll build something for them. I think we can make something happen. We got a garage. We can do something for the pets, the animals. I love the animals. You was talking about the four-legged ones, wasn't you?
I believe for the most part, yes. They weren't.
Yeah, we'll do something
we're
for
not
them.
specific.
We'll do something for them.
Are you implying we're animals, the two?
No, you
Yeah,
been
no,
pretty rough on me.
we're talking about.
You been cutting on him pretty tough.
All right, Mr. Chair.
Nevertheless, we'll do something for the animals. That's our responsibility to take care of the animals that have life as well. We will address it and we will move on and act upon it. All right?
Okay, Mr. Chastain.
I am going to just copy Mr. Lee. How's that?
Okay. Mr. James.
The animal shelter is something that's been a topic of discussion for a number of years. It's probably a $30 to $40 million nut when we start looking at doing it. Nonetheless, despite the oldness of the building, we still have one of the largest shelters in the entire country. We still have an extremely high no-kill rate. Those are the things that initially people came and said they were absolutely insistent on having, that we not kill the animals, and I think we've accomplished that. So, the things that I do know that are being discussed are some form of a public-private partnership where those on the private side would come up with some money and then the city would try to leverage that and build a shelter under the circumstances. The other is a bond issue because it would require a bond issue to build a new shelter. So ultimately, the people of the city may have an opportunity to decide whether or not they want to spend their money, a tax bond issue, to build that shelter. And when they do, whatever they decide is cool by me.
Okay, we're going to have one last question. And I apologize if we haven't gotten to yours. What we're doing is after this, then our candidates give closing statements. We need to be out of the church by 8:45, frankly. So I may be able to get two questions in. Okay. Is it possible to do more for Clay and Platte County portions of Kansas City, especially as urban blight spreads north, with not just south and east? Mr. Chastain, Mr. James, and then Mr. Lee.
Well, that's a confusing question that I'll try to come up with a non-confusing answer. Part of our problem is that we sprawled. And when you sprawl, it makes it more difficult to maintain your infrastructure. When you have a dense population, you can serve it more easily with infrastructure. So part of our problem is that we've lost a lot of people south of the river. And they've migrated to Johnson County, many up to northern Platte County. And so that's part of my vision, is to make this, especially the cities south of the river, a compelling place to live. that we have great cultural institutions, great parks, boulevards, and a great transit system that's the talk of the nation, to bring people back into the city, because we cannot keep sprawling. And so I think the question was, how are we going to help them out there? That's difficult. When they choose to live on the outskirts of the city, it's difficult to bring all the resources and the infrastructure out there because it's not dense. We have to focus on where the density is. And not only to serve that density, but even grow more healthy density south of the river. So the question's not, I don't know whether I've adequately answered that question or not, but I just know that we cannot continue to sprawl. And a transit system is an antidote to that because it builds density around the rail system, where the station stops. That creates density and is an antidote to sprawl.
Mr. James.
Yes, Twin Creeks is one of the biggest projects in the city right now. Estimated that an additional 50,000 more people can move up to Twin Creeks, which is north of the river. One of the things that we've done in this administration is to lay that infrastructure there in order to stimulate that growth. As a matter of fact, one of the things that's going on now is that parks and the developers are working together to lay out a boulevard plan and to lay it out in a way that makes sense under the circumstances. So yes, there's time, there's opportunities to do more. But here's the key thing. We should never allow ourselves to get into this thing of first district versus third district versus fifth district. At the end of the day, it's all Kansas City. And at the end of the day, there are issues and problems unique to each district throughout this city. It's a job of leadership to try to address as many issues across the entire city as possible. North of the river, it's infrastructure. Fifth and third district, it's blights and vacant houses. Fourth district is sewage in the bottom of basements, went because of the overflow control project didn't work. All of those things need to be addressed, and part of what we have to do as leaders in this city is to find ways to address it, recognizing that we have limited budgetary resources, but that if we prioritize and if we work together on it, we can get a lot of those things fixed for people who need them fixed.
For years, I have visited with the merchants. They have cried about the taxes. They have cried that they have been left out. All the money stays south of the river. Platte County is a beautiful part of Kansas City. Clay County is building unbelievable across 152. I visit with the people. But they want something special. You know what they want something special is? They want us to participate and be creative with them as well as we are south of the river. Let us come up there and help them. And they work with us. They have asked me from time and time again, General, Mr. Lee, we're tired of paying out these taxes and the money's going downtown. Can we get some type of relief? They're willing to work with me. I'm willing to work with them. I'm still in Platte County. Yes, our airport lies in Platte County. Yes, people come all the way out of St. Joe to come to work there. What can we do for Platte County? We're gonna pay a whole lot of attention, and we're gonna labor, and we're gonna work with the people in Platte County, let them know that you are also Kansas City as well as it is in Clay County. They have my word on that. I gave my word. We would work, we would labor together. We would develop that part of that city up there. I have to do that. Too many years I've been working with them. They got it.
Okay, the final question. And this will be to first Mr. James, Mr. Lee, and then Mr. Chastain. What, if any, plans do you have to promote diversity and racial harmony here in Kansas City? Mr. James.
I think I was here a month ago, had an entire forum on exactly that subject. I also can tell you that as I was walking down the street with the KCPT folks filming my fellow American talking about race, we talked about exactly that issue. As we had the forum at the Gym Theater a few weeks back, we talked about exactly that issue. We talk about race all the time. I promote racial diversity, sexual diversity, all sorts of diversities in the city, because diversity is what really makes the soup. It's what makes things taste better. It's what makes things better across the board, is to have something other than the same old thing time after time. What we have done, unfortunately, is we've allowed our diversity to be an issue that divides us, not one that unites us. And the only way to get over that is to promote those things, ideas, and opportunities that bring us together in groups so that we can meet and get to understand each other and stop relying on stereotypes. A great place to instill and help diversity is at the earliest age, in schools, in our neighborhoods, where children grow up regardless of where they are, sitting next to somebody who may or may not look like them, but learn how to respect them as children in their schoolrooms and in their neighborhoods where diversity should exist. So we've been working on diversity for quite some time. As a matter of fact, one last thing I'll say is I spent a year as the president of the KCMBA, Kansas City Metropolitan Bar Association, in 2002. I established the diversity initiative for the Kansas City Bar, and I was at the meeting yesterday where after 13 years, the managing partners are still continuing that diversity program.
Okay, thank you, stop. Okay, Mr. Lee.
An old-time religion, race. Race baiting, discriminating, even against your own race. How do you handle that? If one person just extend their hand and love and greet somebody with sincerity, if the children can see us of ripe old age like we are, that we can get along, and we can extend that kindness to the younger generations that are in school, they will see love amongst us. But if we continue to pick each other apart for our own petty discrepancy, and they hear us in the privacies of our homes and automobiles, then they will carry that in their heart. Love begins with you. And if you don't have love in your heart, you can discriminate against your neighbor or anybody of any other color. Race baiting stops and begins with us as an individual, and that's the bottom line. Love is the key.
Mr. Chastain.
I believe the question was how to improve racial harmony.
Well, it says, what, if any, plans do you have to promote diversity and racial harmony here in Kansas City?
Well, I'd say the first thing is to eliminate the great economic disparity in this city. We don't have jobs for people on the east side. They have to get on 3 buses and take 3 hours to get to a job. That doesn't create racial harmony. As I said before, this city has invested too much of its resources into glitzy projects, again, like a downtown convention hotel. How much has Mr. James' administration invested on the east side to uplift the lives of those people? That would do more to create racial harmony, to give them jobs and give them opportunity and improve education. Crime, you know, and this goes into crime too, that we don't need just a good law enforcement policy to fight crime and have racial harmony. We need a new economic policy, a new educational policy, and a new value policy. We have to provide those people training over there and put back in schools, perhaps, vocational and trade school learning, so people can have self-esteem and learn a trade where they can make a living if they don't want to go to college. We used to have those when I was growing up. It was called, you know, we took shop and you learn how to be a mechanic, a mason, construction trades, ways to make a living. So we're not investing our resources and our capital into the disadvantaged parts of our city that I think would improve racial harmony by giving people more opportunity and doing away with the great economic disparity that exists in this city.
Thank you. Okay, and again, if we didn't include your question, I apologize. We really had a lot of questions and very important ones. So now it's time for our closing statements, and as I said earlier, each candidate will have 2 minutes And they can revisit an issue that came up earlier if they wish to do so. And we'll do it in the opposite order of the opening statement. So that would be Mr. Chastain and Mr. James and then Mr. Lee.
Okay. Ladies and gentlemen, I think that you've heard some stark contrast between the candidates in terms of our style of leadership and in terms of our agendas and visions for this city. Now, we also have to keep in mind the context of this mayor's race. We're living in a very a world that's getting more dangerous and scary by the day. A country under great economic and cultural flux and a city beset with daunting problems. So I can't, if I'm elected mayor, I can't promise you I'm going to be a miracle worker. And I can't promise you the moon, but I can sure promise you that I'll shoot for the moon. We'll go for it. We'll put forward innovative changes to move this city, launch this city forward. And it won't be business as usual. It'll be an honest, open administration that's working for the everyday citizen. And it will be an administration that focuses on our high violent crime rate, and with a comprehensive plan, not just putting more police on the ground. We need to have a comprehensive plan for making this city safer and putting our full attention to reducing violent crime. And so I hope you're ready to make the move to elect a new kind of mayor. A mayor that's honest, open, democratic, respects the Kansas City electorate, and has a clear vision of where he wants to take this city and the means to get it there. And I hope you want to have a new kind of government. A government that you can respect and know is working for you and not the wealthy developers and the construction firms. And I hope you want a new kind of city, a city that's more safe, more democratic, more prospering, and more transit-oriented. So I'm ready for this job. I'm up for this job. I can do this job. And I need y'all to elect me to this job. I need your support and your vote. Thank you.
Mr. James.
Yes. We started 4 years ago with a very simple agenda, 4 E's. First E was enforcement. Bring the violence down in the city. We have. Lowest number of homicides in this city since 1972. It wasn't by accident. It wasn't by putting more police officers on the street. It was by coordinating and collaborating with our federal partners, our research partners, and getting the job done through a focused deterrence plan. Another E was education. When we came into office, we found out that 33% on average across this city of third graders were reading proficiently. 19% reading proficiently in KCPS. In 2.5 years, we're up to 26% in KCPS and 38.5% on average across the board. So once again, we've done things that work and actually achieve things. Employment. We have created jobs. Actually, nobody creates jobs. That's a misnomer. What we do is we set the atmosphere for jobs to be created. That's why Cerner is building a $1 billion+ project out south that will, over the next 10 years, create 15,000 tech jobs. That's why Cerner is growing. That's why our entrepreneurs are growing in the city, is because they come here because they know that there is a proper atmosphere to be here. And finally, efficiency. We are one of the most efficient city governments in this country. Don't take my word for it. Just go look it up on magazines. They'll tell you. They'll tell you that the Kansas City KC STAT program is cutting edge across the country. Just had that conversation with Bloomberg Associates yesterday. We have done things that make the city best. We're not overrun by problems. We're not in bad shape. This city is rocking and rolling. Good things are happening. People feel better about this city today than they did 5 years ago, and they're going to feel better about it in 5 weeks than they do about it today, because that's what we're doing. We're succeeding, we've got momentum, and we're going to keep it. Thank you for allowing me to be here with you this evening.
Mr. Lee, you have the
Great.
last word.
Fantastic.
People east side, thank you so much, darling. People east side, the west side, the core of the city has been crying out from one administration to the next administration. Stats can be distorted, but the facts are real when you see the people, and it still exists. North of the river, the facts. Contamination has been dumped inside of them 80 acres of caves in Briar's Cliff, contaminating our water source. The fact. They look to increase our water bill, our sewage bill. The fact. We got an aging old airport that's sitting up there that people just love because it's easy accessible. The facts. We need to do some green-friendly things to some of our large buildings that we own that make it much friendlier and green, health-wise. What are we going to do about the people still getting sick and they don't have jobs? We have to take care of Truman Medical Center. We have to make sure they have the tools to work with. We have to make sure we take care of our people in our city. The facts. It's plain and clear. We don't have that many potholes, but the streets, our boulevards, it's been distorted. Grand Avenue become Grand Boulevard with all the boulevard taxes going to. The facts. That we are here tonight and we're looking to do better than better. Can we do better than better? Yes, we can. Do you want to have that opportunity to participate in a new administration? I have an open door policy. That open door policy is this. We'll work together. We'll move this city. We're all shakers in this city. We won't take no for an answer because we're going to work together. That's the only way you move a nation. You move a nation with love and listen to the people and don't deny the people the vote. Vote is the key, and you're going to vote again. April the 7th, the general. Mr. Lee for mayor, please give me that vote. Slide.
Okay.
Love you, baby.
Well, I want to thank all of our candidates for coming tonight. There are many challenges to running for office, wherever you may be. And it's wonderful that we have people like you who are willing to step up, put yourself out there, and work to provide leadership. Your ideas have been very interesting. And for our audience, thank you very much for coming. And please go out and vote. We have a relatively low turnout of voters in our community. Even for the presidential election in 2012, only 57% of registered voters turned out in Kansas City. For the April 2014 election, the decision on something as important as the school board was made by roughly 6,000 people out of over 220-some thousand registered voters. So we have to turn out to vote. Speak to your family, speak to your neighbors. If they're registered already, great. And by the way, if you want League to come out into your area, to a specific place to registered voters, we have a team of devoted people that goes to some issues north of the river, by the way. That's handled by some others. But we are heavily focused south of the river, and we want to get people registered, but we especially want to get people to go vote. Thank you very much for coming tonight.